Let's jump into it. We've got a new brand. We've got a new shiny new brand I have been painted. I've got a bunch of swag I've dropped down here. We've got 3D printed logos, got stickers. So please come and grab a handful of these afterwards and stick them on anything you can. Send me a photo. Most creative location, I'll send you something else. Make it interesting. Yes, check it on a jet ski somewhere. Put it on the bottom so I can see it. All right, who's familiar with Have I Been Pwned? Has anyone used this before? Okay, that's good. It's going to be easy. Who's been in a data breach? Who's been in Dropbox? LinkedIn? Ashley Madison? There was one left. There was one guy at the back. It's always a guy. It's fascinating. We'll come back to Ashley Madison later on and we'll explain how we know it's always a guy. So Have I Been Pwned is a data breach search service. It aggregates data breaches from all sorts of different places, the ones we just mentioned and nearly 900 others. As of today, we're at nearly 15 billion breached records, which surprises me more than anyone else. I don't know quite how we got here. I don't know how high it will go. I'm kind of curious. We are well and truly past the point of being able to use integers for our IDs many billions of records ago. I think that's sort of one of the indicators it's getting big. It's like you literally have to change data types in order to start storing identifiers. So obviously it's kind of escalated a little bit more than what I had expected, if I'm honest. And it started out very simply. This was Have I Been Pwned in 2013. This was the launch tweet. And I built this thinking that some of my mates would use it, it'd be a bit of fun, I could write some code. And then it's just kind of like escalated and escalated and escalated. And I keep having these like epiphanies of how on earth did it get to this point? And the one that really hit me was in 2017, I ended up here. It was in Congress in the US, which was kind of a fun discussion because they contacted me and said, hi, like, this is America. Would you like to come to Congress? I'm Australian, are you sure? No, yeah, no, it'll be fun. You should come. And it was, but it was obviously a very formal thing. Like, we've all seen congressional testimonies and things, and everyone has to get dressed up, which is a really, really big ask for me. I got dressed up to come today because I've got jeans and shoes on. I live on the Gold Coast. It's very casual. So I had to buy everything in the photo. And I kind of didn't want to make it too serious either. So I went out online and I said, look, has anyone got some socks they can send me? You know how socks are a swag thing now? There's all these cool socks. And I got sent some socks from Sophos, which I wore to Congress. And this is what they look like. They said, for those about to code, we salute you. And I thought, oh, that'll be fun. I'll wear that to Congress. It'll be a bit of Aussie larrikin. And the moment that really got me around, like, how weird has my life become, is not only did I get to go to Congress and get dressed up and wear cool socks, you can now buy a photo of my socks on Shutterstock for $199. How did we get here? This is wild. So obviously data breaches are the thing that I've carved out a bit of a niche for. And one of the things I'm really passionate about with data breaches is disclosure. And particularly lack of disclosure, lack of organisations telling all of you in this room who've been in data breaches that they lost your data. I've got this quote from Claire O'Neill, who is now our previous cybersecurity minister. But I've used this a lot because I like the representation from government about the expectations of organisations being transparent and disclosing when they have an incident. And I like the way she said your customers and your clients will be respectful of it and the Australian government will applaud you for it. And I think we all expect when there is a data breach, when our personal information is disclosed by another company and they know that it's happened, that they let you know, right? So let's talk about when it doesn't happen. This is the disclosure notice I got from Ticketek last year. Was anyone here in the Ticketek data breach? There were 17.3 million email addresses in there. So many of you probably were. And I suspect there are people in here who didn't raise their hand when I asked the question who actually were. I'll show you how I know. So this is the email I got. 1st of June. I'd gone to the V8 supercars at home on the Gold Coast once, bought a ticket, my data went into that corpus, got leaked as part of the Snowflake attacks last year. So Snowflake also hit Ticketmaster, it hit AT&T in the US, it hit Neiman Marcus as well. We'll come back to them a little bit later as well. So it was a major, major incident. And they did send me this notice, and I wasn't happy to be in the data breach, but I was happy that I got notified about it. A few weeks later, it goes into have I been pwned. It's actually 17.6 million, even more than I just said, 17.6 million email addresses. It was very easy to verify this data breach because I just went and found my record and said, yeah, that's me. It's my email address. It's my gender, my date of birth. So this went into have I been pwned several weeks after I got the notification. And immediately after, I started seeing tweets like this. And then there were like lots of them, over and over and over and over. And I'm like, well, what's going on? Because I got a notification email. They put out a public statement the day before they sent those emails, which is the right thing to do. So what's happened? Inevitably, there was a gap between who they thought was impacted and who was actually in the data. And part of the way they decided to deal with this conundrum was to put out a statement. And in a very legally ingenious way, they made it illegal to download the data. I reckon this is great, because if you make crime illegal, less people will do it. But this is literally what happened. Put out an injunction, prevent the downloading of data by anyone who's aware of the injunction, and I'm told is applicable to folks in Australia. Outside of that, make it illegal solves the problem. Now, this came out just after we put it in have I been pwned. That was not coincidental. So obviously, they're aware of the fact that that data is now circulating. What's the right way to put this? We had discussions. We weren't in breach of the injunction because the injunction didn't exist when we got sent the data. So when have I been pwned, amidst those discussions, we agreed to remove that data, to retire the data breach. It was weeks after we'd gone to have I been pwned. We'd sent all of our notifications anyway. So we removed it, which was obviously the outcome that they wanted. And in their statement here, they went on to say, there's some really good resources to go and figure out what to do if you're in a data breach. You can go to ScamWatch, the OIIC, that's our Office of the Australian Information Commissioner. You can also go to the Government Cyber Incident Guidance. And I found this fascinating because they'd sort of said, look, can you remove the data? You haven't notified the people in the gap, but can you remove the data? Here's places to go and figure out what to do if you're in a data breach. And I went and checked every single one of these 3 resources. Here's the first one. That's ScamWatch. Here's the second one. That's the OIC. You may be noticing a pattern here. And cyber.gov.au. I laughed too. So if you didn't put your hand up when I said who was in here, you can't check have I been pwned, and you might not have been told by them. That's not illegal. It's not illegal here, and it's not illegal in places like Europe. I've just come back from Europe, and I was doing the same sort of talk over and over again, and people in Europe are like, well, we've got GDPR, you can't do that there. Yeah, you can. I'll show you how we know. Deezer. Deezer is a French streaming media service. They're massive. You might not have heard of them. They white label a bunch of their services. A heap of people that were in the Deezer data breach had never heard of them, but they signed up to like Virgin Media Music or something like that. Flowed through to here. This is the announcement of their breach on have I been pwned. 2nd of Jan, a few years ago. 229 million, like that is a sizable data breach. And when I put it in have I been pwned, people started sending messages like this. There's our mate Scott Helm, another security guy. You'll see more of Scott later. He says, I managed to get literally 2 days into 2023 before being in a data breach. So I called him up and had a chat to him. I was like, mate, just out of curiosity, did they let you know? And he's like, no, they never told me. I'm in a breach. I never heard anything. And neither did any of these people. And again, we've got this problem where, just like Ticketek, they knew there was a breach. They knew there were a bunch of people they hadn't told, but that's okay. And they can do that under GDPR in just the same way that organisations in Australia can do that under our privacy laws. And I like to think of it as suppression. I'm sure that they don't like that word, but it is suppressing disclosure of the incident. And the reason that can happen both here and in places like Europe is because of carve-outs like this. If the breach is likely to result in a high risk of adversely affecting individuals' rights and freedoms, then you've got to tell them. In Australia, we use the term if it's likely to cause serious harm. And the sentiment is the same in both cases, which is if it's likely to put you at personal physical risk, if it's likely to disclose something highly sensitive about you, if it's likely to put you at risk of identity fraud or account impersonation or things like that. And you can self-assess that too. There's some criteria, but you self-assess it. So whilst, particularly under GDPR, they've got 72 hours to report it to a local regulator. So for example, the UK's got the Information Commissioner's Office. They don't have to report it to you guys who are in the breaches. And that's just nuts. It's just nuts that our data gets leaked and spread around the place and you just don't have to tell anybody. Perfectly legal. So non-reporting is a really big problem. And I'm telling you this because this is why Have I Been Pwned still exists. If every organisation got breached, turned around immediately and is like, hey, look, we got breached, here's what's happened, here's what you do to help yourself, we don't really have a job to do anymore, which would be great. So that's not reporting. Another one is under-reporting. And Neiman Marcus is a good example. I just mentioned them. They got hit by Snowflake as well. Incidentally, Snowflake hackers, and this might partly explain the reaction of organisations like Ticketek with their injunction, Snowflake hackers tried to ransom everyone as well. So not only have they breached a company like Ticketek or Neiman Marcus, but they've said, give us millions of dollars or we're going to dump the data publicly. Now, the fact that that data is now in Have I Been Pwned probably tells you what happened. So Neiman Marcus disclosed, and because America, they disclosed differently in different states. So this is Maine. And in Maine, they said there were 64,000 something people in that breach. Now, I don't know if you know who Neiman Marcus is. They're a massive department store. It's like Myers on steroids. They're all over the US. They're huge. So 64,000 does, it's lowball. But then the data gets dumped publicly. Number's different, right? Like a lot different. And part of the problem is that when I see something like this, I'm looking at their statement, and then I'm looking at the hacker's statement, and because the thing is, if I load the data and Have I Been Pwned, and I say 40 million people, and you've got legal statements submitted to regulatory authorities saying something fundamentally different, I've got to get that right. I've really, really got to get that right. So far, I don't think we've gotten it wrong, which is good. But it's, again, like this is why we're still here. I think there's something kind of beautiful about the truth being in the data. Like when you have the data breach and you have all of the records in there, and you can go, okay, well, who's right? Was it 64,000 or was it 40 million? You can work out the truth. Now, all of these data breaches, obviously something somewhere has gone wrong. And very often you see particularly journalists, I get these queries from journalists all the time. They'll go, what percentage of data breaches is caused by human error? Like they're trying to figure it out. And then you'll see like infosec companies come out, they'll do study, they'll probably use AI or something like that. And they're like, 93.7% of all data breaches are due to human error. No, they're not. It's every one of them. Have you ever seen a data breach where you've got, oh, I don't know what happened, everything went perfectly right? So no, something somewhere we screwed up. We built some vulnerable code, we left the database without a password, we created insecure direct object references, we've got a great big laundry list of things that go wrong. There's always a problem somewhere. Now, one of the problems is that very often when someone finds a problem, with an application and they try and report it to the organisation, often preventatively, before the data breach happens, sometimes they just don't even get a response. They cannot get anyone's attention at the organisation to try and stop a data breach from happening. And occasionally they'll reach out to me, this is the people trying to report it, and they'll say, hey, look, I can't get this company to listen, can you help? And I'll go, yeah, I can put out a tweet like this. Now, I know what this means, most of you know what this means when I put out a tweet like this, but the organisation doesn't necessarily know, and I do generally want to try and find people that can help us fix the problem. Now, just as a recap, in case you're not familiar with Grindr, this is the message the person who was trying to report the incident sent me. They said they found a serious security issue on the biggest gay dating applications, but the vendor keeps ignoring him, and that the vulnerability allows an attacker to hijack any account. Now, I did verify this before I put out that tweet. So he sent me the proof of concept. I went through, tested it, and was like, yep, that is exactly what he said it is. The only prerequisite was you had to know someone's email address. So if you knew the email address of someone who had a Grindr account, you could take over the account. I'm going to show you how to do it. You can't do it anymore. This is how it would have been done. Now, when I think it's very typical in this industry, if you disclose an incident like this, like the normal best practice is you disclose it privately, you give them time to fix it. When you're confident it's fixed, then you might write it up. So I find it interesting to write these things up because we can all learn from it. But when I write it up, I want to make it like an interesting narrative, right? So rather than just being boring and technical, let's make it a bit of a story about how I take over someone else's account. So I needed somebody with a Grindr account. So I reached out to Scott because I thought he might be able to help. And turns out he didn't have one, but he was willing to make one. So he made a Grindr account. And I was like, mate, look, try and make it realistic, but also be clear that it's not real, because what if someone falls desperately in love with you? Like, just try and like set some expectations. So he makes this account, he calls it test account, just to be clear. And then we go through the process of taking over his account. So here's how it works. We've all seen the password reset feature on applications before. You've forgotten your password, how do I get back in? So you find the password reset page, you go over there, you put in the email address, and you click the submit button. Now, when you do a password reset, you normally get an email sent to that address that has a token on the end of it. Now, it's got to be a strong enough token that someone can't guess it or can't enumerate it or can't brute force it. That token is the secret that lets you reset the password for the account. Now, if before submitting the submit button that got you to this page, you pressed F12, right, and looked at your network tools, you would see the token in the response. So long as you knew someone's email address, you could get the secret token. You can take that token, you can put it into the URL like this. You can figure out what this URL is because you just create another dummy test account with a cool photo. You do a password reset for yourself, you know the path, you know where the token goes, you then get someone else's token, you put it in there, and now you can go and set a new password, which I did. And then I logged on to Scott's Grindr account. Now, I have had to blur every single photo here. There are no photos on Grindr you cannot show without blurring. I could also see all of Scott's specs. And most alarmingly, I could see his DMs. And Luke really, really liked him. I got to be honest, I was somewhat shocked at... Look, I've never used a dating app before. But I was surprised by what I saw here. Like, I think I have a reasonable expectation of what you'd normally expect to see, but it was very, very specific. And I raised the point about it being clearly flagged a test account, just to be clear. So that was Grindr, and fortunately they got that fixed. But I don't think people really expected an entity like Grindr to be the sort of thing to make a mistake like that. And I think one of the interesting things is in this industry, all sorts of people or organisations you expect to get things right occasionally screw it up. Like this guy. So I'm going to tell you how this happened. The first time I felt confident talking about it publicly. I got phished last month, and it wasn't great fun. I'm going to talk you through how it happened and some of the things that went wrong along the way, and then we're going to talk about the single biggest thing that would have made a big difference. So here's how it started. I got this alleged email from MailChimp. Now, I use MailChimp to send email to people that subscribe to my blog. Pretty straightforward. Whack your email address in, then I email you either weekly or daily when there's new stuff, depending on the option you chose. And the first thing that I'd note when you're looking at this, now what I know as a phishing email, is it doesn't feel like a phishing email. Like, where's the uppercase? There's no exclamation marks. Everything's spelled correctly. But perhaps a little bit more nuanced than that, like, where's the sense of urgency? You know, we normally get phishing emails. It's like, do this now or you're going to be locked out, or your card is under attack, or you've lost money now. And you get all of these cues that we get used to, but this one was just, this was chef's kiss. This was a good phishing email, evidently. Now, you might say, they're sending you a link. Never click on links in email. Life is very hard if you never click on a link in an email, because how many times do you get emailed something that is a deep link through to a gazillion different things you might have to do? Now, someone like the ATO is very good at not sending links. NAB has said we'll never send you links. You know, I think that's good. But there are so many cases where there is a specific thing you need to look at. I get alerts from Microsoft because something on Azure has triggered some sort of condition, and it's a link all the way down to that alert, so I can do one click and I can see what it is. I mean, this is just the way the web works, deep links. Now, some people might also say, well, read the URL that goes to before you follow it. And after you read the URL, you will know if it is a phish or not. So we'll do a test. Google. Google has a blog. Which one of these is the correct address for the Google blog? Now, we're going to do this by show of hands, and then we'll just see how many of you are wrong. Who thinks the first one is the correct address for the Google blog? Okay, well, I'm going to go with about 15% of the room. Second one. Sure. They have roughly the same. Third one. Roughly the same. Fourth one. No one. All right, so first of all, the numbers don't add up. We're about 60% short. But the responses were pretty evenly distributed between those first three URLs. But aren't you meant to be able to read a URL and know if it's safe or not? Don't we tell people this the whole time? So just for kicks, it's the first one. Google has its own TLD. The second one didn't resolve anywhere. The third one redirected to the first one. And the fourth one, I think, also didn't resolve anywhere. But it's kind of odd because they own the TLD, so who knows. Anyway, the point is you can't look at the URL and make a sensible decision about whether it's trustworthy or not. Is this the correct URL for the MailChimp sign-on page? Who says yes? Who says no? Still doesn't add up, but there are a lot more no's. It seems feasible, but it's not. This is the phishing URL. So I'll walk you through how this whole thing happened. When I went to mailchimp.sso.com, this is what I saw. Typical login page. In fact, this whole column here is going to be the phishing column. Everything you see here was presented by the phisher. So here's me. And one of the problems here is that this wasn't me when I clicked on it. I was in London and I'd just flown over there and I was jet lagged, and Scott and I had been out the night before talking about his Grindr experiences. So I pretty much looked like this. I was tired. Tired and jet lagged and a moment of weakness. So I went to this page. I followed the link. Now, when I went to this page, because I'm a good security citizen, I have one password, the password manager one password. All my passwords are strong and unique. But when I went there, one password didn't fill in the form. Because for those of you who use a password manager before, normally it's like one password. I can go there on an iOS device, a little thing pops up the bottom and it's like, click here to fill in. On my PC, I go Control / and it fills it in, and we're fine. But it didn't fill it in because my MailChimp account looks like this in one password. And the website that it's stored against down the bottom is not the same as the one up the top. So one password did not want to automatically fill it in. So why did this work? Why did I then tell the browser to fill in with these details anyway, even though it wasn't the right URL? It's a really easy answer. We get conditioned. We get conditioned over and over again to going back to a site that you've created an account on and the URL is different to the one that you created on originally. Not just the URL, but the whole domain. Not just the domain part, but sometimes even the TLD. And I was trying to find a good example of this. And then literally this morning, this happened. I'm trying to book a car in Germany. Literally a few days ago, I booked this car. I thought I booked this car, but I never got a confirmation. So I'm like, sitting there at breakfast, I'm going to go back to Sixt. I will log into my Sixt account and I'll see what's happening with my reservation. But one password says no suggestions for sixt.de. It would not fill in my details because I created the account on sixt.com. So, is this the real Sixt website? How do you know? He knows because he knows. You're definitely getting phished, mate. Now, this is a serious problem. So these are what's referred to as related origins. So sixt.de is a different TLD to sixt.com, but it is still the correct Sixt website. Qantas does the same thing. I was trying to find other examples. I've got qantas.com.au and I've got like login.qantas.com, both in my password manager because both can get used. So see how we get conditioned to seeing different domains legitimately used for the same website. So when I saw MailChimp-SSO, I was like, well, this happens all the time. So anyway, I filled in the details here. I went, okay, this is fine, this is Sixt, let's trust sixt.de, and I logged on to my account, and then this morning, in the hotel in Melbourne, I got this confirmation notice, new login alert from Sydney, using Go HTTP client 1.1. Does this look legit? What do you reckon? This looks sus. It looks super sus, but it happened immediately after I logged into Sixt. So you see how, like, as we sort of delve into this, we're seeing behaviours that are legitimate but reconfirm just the screwiness of the web. So when you see a phishing site that behaves the same way, you're like, well, the web's screwy. It happens all the time. So I went and filled my details in from my password manager, trusting the phishing domain. What happened then was that that phishing website automatically sent those credentials to the legitimate MailChimp website. Now, it's done all this automatically. This is all just code. Many of you have probably constructed HTTP requests before. All you've got to do is figure out what fields are in the request. It's a post request. It wants these headers and whatever else. It sends it to MailChimp.com. MailChimp then says, aha, 2FA. Because as we've established, I'm a responsible security person. I have multi-factor authentication turned on my account just to make sure that if someone has my username and my password, but they don't have the one-time password from my authenticator app, they can't get in. Therefore, I cannot have my account taken over. But here's the problem, like, this is the moral of the story. The phishing site then pops up the same thing, sends it to me. And it says, hey, Troy, can you enter the one-time password into this form? So I'm like, yeah, I know where to get that from. So I get that from my password manager. I put it into the form. It sends it to MailChimp, and now I'm authenticated. Except it's not me that's authenticated, it's the fish in the middle that's authenticated. So see how, even though I have two-factor authentication turned on, one-time passwords, whether they're via an authenticator app or via an SMS, are phishable. They're not phishing resistant. Now, immediately after this, I got this alert. Now, a couple of things here. IP address, New York. We just established from Sixt that you can't trust a lot of the stuff in these messages anyway. So when I first got this, it's like, I'm in London. Oh, maybe I turned on my VPN, I'm in New York or something like that. But then I'm thinking about this list export. And what we figured out later on is that after successfully phishing my credentials, the script that the phisher person had set up obviously automatically logged me in, and then there's a feature on MailChimp to create an API key. So they created an API key, and then they used the legitimate API with the legitimate key to dump my mailing list, which was 16,000 people. So that's how I got phished. And it was just before 7 a.m. as well, like it was early in the morning. I wrote this blog post that's associated to it. So I disclosed, like think about Ticketek, how long has it taken them to disclose? So far we're at infinity. I disclosed 34 minutes later. And by the end of the day, I put my own data in Have I Been Pwned, which is very meta. But 16,000 of my subscribers, of course, most of whom were also subscribers to Have I Been Pwned, got their notifications. And then all the news started, which was not where I expected to see myself that day. I like this one. Everyone gets pwned eventually. I even made it into the Norwegian news, which I thought was kind of cool. Now, I can joke about it now. It was an unpleasant experience, but it's only email addresses. No one got too upset, and most of the press and everything was actually really, really positive because they're like, hey, this can happen to anyone. Just purely ironically, the reason I was in London is I was meeting with some government agencies the day before, and literally probably 12 hours before I got phished, I was with the National Cybersecurity Centre talking about how can we drive the adoption of passkeys. Who here's used a passkey before? Okay, that's not too bad. Let's call it 20%. Right, so passkeys are awesome. They look like this. This is what it looks like in my password manager. So this is our favourite networking company, Ubiquiti. And Ubiquiti supports passkeys. And you can see this was only a couple of days ago. I only realised a couple of days ago they support passkeys. Before that, I had the OTP, the one-time password, the little windy thing in the numbers, which as we now know is problematic. Creating a passkey is pretty much the same way as creating any other form of 2FA. You go into security settings, there'll be a 2FA section, you've got OTPs here, you've got passkeys. You create that, it returns a key to you, you store the key in your client of choice. That could be your iCloud keychain, that could be in your Google Chrome. In my case, that's in my password manager so that I can sync it to other devices. Now I want to show you what it looks like to log into Ubiquiti using a passkey. This is a real-time screen recording. It's going to be quick because it's really, really easy to log in with a passkey as a second factor. So here we go. I click the field, one password pops up, I click on my account there, it fills it in, it's then like we need a passkey. I click on continue, that's it, bam, we're logged in. First time I'd done it on this device, so I then had to trust this device. How cool is that? Now that's called non-phishable 2FA. You cannot phish a passkey. The passkey just will not be entered into a browser that isn't on the correct address. And it's cryptographically signed when it is entered. So even if it was the right address, or the wrong address rather, it wouldn't go through in any usable way. Think about the little digital files that you sync across your devices. These are awesome. You cannot be phished with a passkey. If you want to know which services support passkeys, go and check out this website. .directory is actually the TLD, passkeys.directory. 1Password runs this. They list not only a whole bunch of websites that already support passkeys, but then they've got another list which is websites where there are requests to support passkeys. So at the moment, the #1 requested service is Steam. You know, like Steam, the gaming platform, doesn't support passkeys. And it's games. Like, they have so many account takeovers because a lot of the users are kids as well. So Passkeys completely solves this phishable turf problem. Turn Passkeys on whatever is important to you that supports it. And if it doesn't support it, go here and vote for them or add them in. So that's Passkeys. Now, running Have I Been Pwned, it seems that it may have inspired some other, let's say, less reputable services. Services like this. This is WeLeakInfo. Now, I don't know where they got the idea to put a big search box there, you whack your email address into and then they show you results. But anyway, that's what you do. You put in any email address, just like Have I Been Pwned, but unlike Have I Been Pwned, it then comes back and says, would you like to buy the data? Like all the data. You know, think about the things in the breaches we've just looked at. You know, dates of birth, passwords, physical addresses, all this sort of stuff. Any of the sorts of things you see down here too. This is what it looks like now, which is a pleasing result. Here's another one. This was leaked source. And there's an interesting theme here. Like, all of these services, they all have the word leak in them. Every time you see the word leak in them, you know it's not going to be around for long. And it was the same sort of deal. Look at that. From as low as 76 cents a day, you can buy people's data. People bought my data just to send it to me to go, hey, Troy, just so you know, like, you've got passwords in there because they're cracking password hashes and things as well. You've got other personal info in there. And every one of these sites that's selling your personal info with the expectation of other people doing harm to you. So this site was advertising on hacking forums. Now, if you're advertising on a hacking forum, what do you reckon is going to happen to the data that then gets sold to the people frequenting those sites? Like, it's not good things. Every one of these sites tries to fly under the radar insofar as the people behind them try to be anonymous. You cannot find anywhere in here which is, you know, like, you got to Have I Been Pwned. It's about us. There's my big photo there and like a link to my LinkedIn profile and why I built this site and all this stuff about me. You cannot find any information about the people that run these sites because they're trying to fly under the radar for obvious reasons. But they do eventually get caught. And the person who was ultimately behind this site was this guy, Jordan Bloom. He's a Canadian guy. I think he was about 24 years old here. They're always young people because I guess they've got time. When you get older, you have less time. Maybe you've got a better moral compass as well when you get a bit older. But Jordan was actually running the company which ran the service. There was a little entity that sat there. And he was obviously trying to fly under the radar by not having any information about him on the website, which is why I found it very strange with some of the money he earned from running this service, selling our personal data. He tried to be anonymous by driving around in a bright green Lamborghini. So that ultimately didn't work out real well. A lot of these services are getting data from websites like this. So this is a popular hacking forum on the clear web. So one of the big misunderstandings about where data breaches come from is that they're on the dark web. They come from the dark web. That's rarely the case. They're usually out there in the clear like this, or in recent years, especially on Telegram channels as well. So this was allegedly the Oracle data from last month. I think they wanted something like $200 million or something ridiculous from Oracle not to leak this data. But it's out there on the public forum, and this is a website called Breach Forums, or BF as it's often called. And Breach Forums has gone through several iterations, which has changed again very recently. I'm going to show you what it looks like now in just a sec. It was Raid Forums, and then there was another one that came along that replaced it after Raid Forums got taken in. That was called Breach Forums. Breach Forums, the first Breach Forums, the one that came after Raid Forums, was run by this guy. Not the real guy, it's Pom Pom Purin. That was the avatar that he operated under. And a little bit like those other leak sites, they operated under the veil of anonymity, not expecting to ever get caught because they're young, they think they're invincible, until they get caught. So this is Connor Fitzpatrick. And Connor Fitzpatrick was the operator of that service. He's 20 in this photo, and he'd been doing it for years. So most people get involved in this when they're children. So you have children aggregating huge volumes of personal data and exchanging it with the expectation of it doing harm. This is what breach forums looked like after they figured out it was Connor. Now, every time I see one of these, one of the things that strikes me is I love the fact that we've got so many of these agencies that many of you will recognise the badges for, working together. And as I travel around, I spend time with a lot of these, and the thing that we often hear is just how collaborative it is. And it's kind of, like warms the heart a little bit. We know that our AFP is often up there working with the FBI and the NCA in the UK, and it's great. But it's not the best thing about this image. The best thing about this image is that someone at the FBI is getting really creative with these takedown notices. And someone decided that the best thing to do with that little pom-pom Purun avatar was to put tiny little handcuffs on him. I visited the FBI in Pittsburgh in September, and we were talking about this. I was like, I want to meet the person who's doing the imagery on this, because it wasn't just this. I've done other things that are very similar, and I just got like a wry smile where it's like, yeah, you're adding a little bit of spice to what is probably otherwise a very demanding, stressful job. So yeah, good on them for that. Now, I mentioned breach forums had gone through several iterations. So the one that was run by Connor got taken down. It got replaced by a new one. As of today, this happened probably about 2 weeks ago, but today it looks like this. Now, I won't read the whole thing, but there's a lot of speculation here about whether or not there was a My Bulletin Board 0 day, and was it from law enforcement? Did law enforcement get in and get all the data? I do have a little bit of information about the value of these services to law enforcement, but I'll put it to you as a question. If these websites are running on the clear web, so you can easily figure out where they are, you can easily figure out who they're hosted by, you can easily take them down in all sorts of different ways, why do you think they run for so long? It's a lot of really, really valuable information on here. And I don't think the people frequenting these sites and leaving so much of the information really realise how much of a treasure trove it is for the likes of law enforcement. This has already been replaced. There's another one. The site still looks like this today. If you do go to URL right now, this is what you see. A new one's been stood up on a different TLD. And they just Phoenix over and over and over again. Now, I mentioned earlier on with Neiman Marcus, I said something like the truth is in the data, and that there's something sort of beautiful about the data not lying. And Ashley Madison was a really good example of that. Tens of millions of people impacted by Ashley Madison, including dozens of women. And that was about it. And we know that because we know the data. A huge number of the women that signed up into Ashley Madison signed up from IP address 127.0.0.1. All right, like they were bots, that was it. And what I find especially fascinating with data breaches is that sites will often represent one thing, but they're actually doing something different. And it's not until you have the data breach that the truth comes out. Now, I'll give you a fun example of this. Let's say you wanted to go and buy some shit on the internet. I don't mean metaphorical shit like stuff from Temu. Let's say you wanted to go and buy actual shit on the internet. This is a real website. You can go there in your browser now and you will see this. Now, I'm going to talk you through the process of how Shit Express works. There's a 4-step process. Number 1. Of course it's from an animal. It wouldn't be from a human. That would just be weird. So, you choose an animal. Different colours, smells and consistencies. Number 2 is you give them an address, because you've got to send your box of shit to somewhere. That's the whole point of it. All countries around the world. Has anyone ever tried to come into Australia with a banana? How are you going to send a box of shit? The one I kind of can't quite figure out is the sticker. Okay, all right. Big smiley face, why not? The one I really like is this, pay and stay anonymous. 100% anonymous. We will never reveal your identity, even if you pay by credit card or PayPal. Now, who here has been able to get either a credit card or a PayPal account anonymously? Right? It doesn't work like that. The finance industry is so structured around KYC, know your customer. Every time you do anything related to finance on the internet, you've got to hand over so much personal information. Which is why, when you go to check out with your box of shit, you get to a Stripe payment page like this. Now, maybe it's just by my measure, but I don't think that's very anonymous, leaving all that information. So anyway, they had a data breach, and I'm going to show you a portion of the data breach that I decided was particularly interesting. This is what it looks like. And I was trying to find, like, what's a good example to put in a talk? And I wanted to find the one person that had posted multiple things. And can anyone see what the pattern is here? What's the commonality between these names? Anyone know? Judges, Supreme Court judges. And the only reason I knew that is Brett Kavanaugh had been in the news some years ago because he was like a Trump appointee and there's always drama. But they're all Supreme Court judges. So someone had gone on a literal shit-posting rampage, sending boxes of shit to Supreme Court judges with their IP address recorded next to it. Now, I said the truth is in the data. So remember early on, you can choose your own animal? It's all horseshit. Every single record was horseshit. There was not a single pig there. And that in itself I kind of find it fascinating because every time looking at a data breach, you're trying to like mentally go through the motions of how it works. And I thought, well, you know, horses, you've got, how often do you like drive through the countryside and there's like bags of it because you've got to put it on your garden? So maybe there's a good ROI on horseshit. And then I was like, well, what if you could do it all over the world? Maybe there's like affiliate models and there are literally people in Australia collecting horse shit in order to distribute it out in packages so that you have local distribution and you don't have to worry about customs. I know, I'm speculating, but it seems feasible. Okay, so that was Shit Express. Now let me give you another example of an egregiously bad security incident. Does anyone use Spoutable? So remember when Elon bought Twitter and went a bit crazy, right? And there are lots of people who are like, screw this guy, I'm moving to. A lot of people went to Mastodon. There are other ones which are aligned to the other side of the political spectrum. People went to Parler and Gab and Truth Social and things like this. And then Spoutable appeared as an alternative as well. It's a Spoutable social media platform. Now, we've all used different social media platforms before. You have this concept of there being different users of the platform. You can go to a user's profile, you can see some publicly available information about them. You know, usually their name, their avatar, maybe a short bio or something. Now, very often this is done asynchronously via an API. You go to a web page, JavaScript makes a call, pulls back a JSON response, and it puts the output on the screen. This is what that JSON response looks like for my account. I'm going to show you what's under these lines in a moment. But everything you see here so far, so yeah, I don't know if they had to put my gender there, but for me at least, I don't care too much about that. Maybe there's a toggle somewhere where you can decide whether that's publicly visible or not. But let's start looking at the other stuff they sent back. One of the things they sent back was my email address. So you could find anyone's email address just by going to their profile, looking at the DevTools. Okay, that's bad. That probably shouldn't happen. There's a lot of people that want to have social media identities that aren't immediately attributable back to their real life personalities. Next one, IP address. Now that's bad because that's personally identifiable. It correlates to other things. Maybe you're the person sending shit to High Court judges and it matches that IP address. And then we get to the good stuff, password. Now, this is a bcrypt hash of a password. And bcrypt is a good hashing algorithm. We bcrypt hash our passwords such that if ever they get disclosed via a data breach, preferably not because you just returned it async onto the client, you have some protection. It's a very slow hashing algorithm, still crackable, but much better than MD5 or SHA-1 or something. But why would you return it in the response? Because there is a chance that someone with a fast enough GPU and a plain text candidate can go through and crack that hash. However, because, as we've established earlier, I'm a responsible security guy, I turned on 2FA. Now there's another problem. Now you laugh, but it's a bcrypt hash. The problem is all the backup codes are 6 numbers. So you have 1 million possible values. How fast can you create 1 million bcrypt hashes? And you don't have to create 1 million. Odds are you're going to create 500,000 before you find the right one. So you're going to be able to crack that backup code very easily. And the backup code, you know how when you set up 2FA, it's like, hey, keep these backup codes so that if you lose your authenticator app or your passkey or something, you can get back in later on. So this can override 2FA. But you don't even need that because you have this. Oh, sorry, that is the PIN. So my actual PIN was 570075. So if I was just enumerating through, I could easily figure out what it was by cracking the hash. Now let's try it again. We don't need the backup code because we have a 2FA secret. Now, when you set up an authenticator app with a one-time password that does a little swirly thing and changes the numbers, it needs a secret to generate that code. If you have that secret, you can start generating your own valid OTPs. I gave this code to our Have I Been Pwned developer, Stefan, and he put it into his own password manager and started generating codes that were correct. But you don't even need that because there's one final bit here, which is the EM code. Now, what the EM code did is exactly what that secret code in the Grindr example did. That is the token that gets emailed to you in order to reset your password. So all the other PII breaches and everything here, you didn't even need because you can immediately go in and reset anyone's account because you've got that code. That's fun, isn't it? Okay, now look, I have deliberately left about 10 minutes for questions as well. So does anyone have any questions about any of those things or other cyber things? Or is everyone just stunned about Shoot Express? Yeah.
Could you go into a bit more detail about how Passkeys would have solved the phishing attack?
Yeah, good question. Could I go into more detail about how Passkeys would have solved the phishing attack? All right, so, and we'll embellish on this now that I've got time. After this happened, I did go into MailChimp and I was like, gee, I hope they support Passkeys because if I turn this on, it'll be fine. I'll explain why. I went in there, no passkey support. I sent them an email because I had several concerns over that MailChimp thing. So one was no passkey support. The other is, I don't know if you saw on the one password screen, the email address for my MailChimp account is mailchimp@troyhunt.com. Now, I use that in one place, in one place only. And nobody was sending phishing emails to troy@troyhunt.com or Netflix@troyhunt.com. They knew exactly the right email address. And I spoke to multiple other parties that also received the same phishing attack, and it was the same thing. So one of the things I put to MailChimp is I was like, look, I think someone has your list. In a very meta kind of way, I think someone has the MailChimp mailing list. Right, so the passkey, what would have fixed it is if MailChimp, instead of responding saying, please enter the OTP, if they had have responded and said, please enter the passkey, you cannot relay that via a third party. That has to be entered directly into the browser on the domain of the website which it's signed against. It is impossible to phish it from somewhere else. It's the same if ever anyone uses like a YubiKey, a U2F key? Same thing, you cannot phish a U2F key. You've got different challenges, you've got to buy the key, you've got to have the key with you, but they're awesome. Like if you don't have that and you get challenged for it, you're not getting in. Other questions? Well, that's easy.
Do you have any comments about LastPass and how, so I have a LastPass account, I use LastPass, but they were hacked
no.
time ago.
Yep.
I noticed that you're using OnePass. should I ditch LastPass?
Oh, look, I can give you a backup of your LastPass if you... No, I don't have it. I don't have it. First of all, any security incident for a security company is a bad look. Like when you carve out your entire business model on keeping things private, to have any sort of security incident is bad. I do think that there was a little bit of hyperbole around the LastPass stuff, but LastPass didn't just have one incident. They had multiple different incidents. Also, do you know who owns LastPass? There's Log Me In. And you can Google my name and log me in. I have I'm not real keen on them because they're so frequently used in call centre virus scams. You know when you get a call and they're like, hey, we're from Microsoft. You've got viruses on your PC. Please give us access and we'll fix it. Log Me In was just used over and over and over again. So when they bought LastPass, I wrote something about here's how to migrate from LastPass to 1Password. Caveating my answer with I do have a relationship with 1Password. They've got product placement. I've been on their advisory board. I have interests. I think what I find in my own personal experience, other than the issues that LastPass has had, and some of them have been bad. There's a lot of writing out there about some of the crypto account takeovers more recently seem to have been traced back to one of the compromises that expose keychains, albeit with master passwords. But if you've got enough time and you can crack that password and then you can get someone's seed phrase or something for their crypto wallet. In my experience, every time I've spoken to someone at LastPass, it's kind of what I'd expect from a big multinational corporate. Every time I've spoken to people at 1Password, they've been like our people, just very down to earth, very, very casual. They build a really, really cool product that integrates with everything. I wrote a blog post, I think in 2011, about the only secure password is the one you can't remember, and I went through the process of how I chose a password manager then. 1Password works across everything very efficiently. My 12-year-old daughter's here, she's been using 1Password for years. It's really easy to use for family accounts as well, and they've got a big enterprise story too, if you want to use it in the company. So, just my 2 cents. Any more? Up the back.
Do you have any stats on like who's the most owned person?
Any stats on who's the most owned person? So there's this guy, testedexample.com, and they are seriously pwned. Has anyone been in more than 30 data breaches on Have I Been Pwned? All right, there's your answer. In this room, me. And I'm in LinkedIn, Dropbox, and just not Ashley Madison, a gazillion other ones because I've been on the internet since the mid-90s and I've got a long paper trail. And it's just fascinating that sometimes people say, well, you know, maybe what you should do is just not hand your information over to people. How do you go with that in COVID? It's like, how do you get anything without handing your information over? This data breach isn't in Have I Been Pwned, I didn't load it, but I was in the Australian Red Cross Blood Service data breach. And the reason I was in there is because the blood van came around to my workplace at the time, and it would have been 2012 maybe, and a bunch of us went, you know, well, we should go and give blood, and we went in there, and I got a clipboard and a pencil, and I put my data on the clipboard, donated blood, and went, okay, that's it, I've done my good deed, and years later I'm in a data breach because it gets transcribed. So you really can't stop yourself from being in online systems. All you can do is control your risk once it happens. And I think to the question about password managers and the discussion on Passkeys, if you've got a password manager, strong, unique passwords, and particularly if you've got non-phishable 2FA, you're pretty solid. And then hopefully when you are in a data breach 30 plus times, it's not going to matter too much. All right, folks, we're at time. Please come and grab some stickers and logos and things, and thank you very much for coming.